Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. This is a podcast for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault, whether as a child or as an adult. Know that you are not alone and the abuse was not your fault. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a certified recovery life coach and also a survivor. Let's find hope and healing together. And welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I'm your host, Mike Chapman. We are continuing our interview with Brandon Andrus Green. If you want to hear the first part, listen to last week's episode of part 1, and we're continuing with part 2.
They had gone through these scenarios before with other play toys, me being the play toy. The previous times the boy died and that I just lived. I think that at this point we have different terminology now than we did back in 2003. I believe that they were in a polyamorous relationship, and knowing that that wasn't socially acceptable, they kept it a secret. I believe that he was probably into boys, and that he knew that because of their age and size difference, that she needed someone she could be attracted to, and I was her type, and that he was great with her dating me. He was great with the whole ruse, but at a certain point when he started noticing that she actually started having feelings for me and started actually preferring me and was actually getting attached to me and wanted to actually get away from him, that he was like, oh, we don't play that. He was thinking he has to take control of the situation again. And I won't go into detail, but they had, in previous states, in previous times, they had brought in other young men that she would date and have relations with, and then ultimately he would end up drugging and they would end up passing away. He was really busy. So even after I was being kidnapped and tortured, he was driving back and forth from where I was being kept in Texas back to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to keep an alibi. He was meeting with a local judge and had his own court case going on, I believe, in Kansas, where he was a state witness. So he was staying busy meeting with high-ranking people that could create an alibi for him when all this comes out. He could easily say, what are you talking about? I was at lunch with Judge blah, blah, blah. How could I have been in Texas doing these things to this young man? But while he was in town, he contacted one of my drug dealer friends. Before I went on the lam, I had warned my friends they need to stay away from him. I know that his drugs and connections are very tempting, but he cannot be trusted. And I think that one of my friends thought that I was just trying to keep him from making more money, that I didn't want him to take my connect. So he ended up answering a phone call from my trafficker. My trafficker had contacted this young man, and make a long story short, this young man was lured into a hotel, was given some drugs under the guise of testing it out. It was supposed to be an exotic form of ecstasy, but instead it was, let's assume, like a whole bunch of Ambien, something that actually drugged him. He ended up waking up days later in the hospital. He had been robbed and raped, and I've never heard from him since then. This trafficker had a propensity of doing these types of things. From all accounts, it's kind of how he got his jollies off. It was fun for him. He started drugging people at a young age. He enjoyed having guinea pigs, human guinea pigs. And I know from having in-depth conversations with him, he also had his own long list of childhood trauma. And then now his son is in prison for kidnapping his grandma and killing his stepbrother. And there is story after story after story. It was a generational thing. My trafficker was also abused by his father, who his father also kidnapped and abused some other people. So I believe that I had stumbled into a family of generational abuse. From everything I lived through, I very much believe that it was satanic ritual abuse. Not that they were worshiping Satan, but it was ritualized torture.
Right.
With a goal in mind.
Right. Yeah, and I know unless they're really Satan worshippers, they have different terms for it, but ritualistic abuse or organized ritual abuse, there's all kinds of different terms, because I think that describes me and the group I was in, where it's very organized, and they would have these events and do these things again and again and again. So ritualistic, whether it involved actual Satan worship or not. And they used to say, okay, only it's this, but they realized there's a lot of that happening that had nothing to do with Satan. So, though it's all evil, all bad, but yeah, ritualistic abuse is a huge thing, and it's very in what we now call dark web kind of things. But yes, it's been around for decades. I mean, it was the 1970s for me when it happened to me, and so it's been around for forever. These
Literally
kinds
forever.
Of ritualistic abuse.
I think it dates back thousands of years, that it's nothing new on this scene. I think that the term itself is kind of a misnomer.
Right. And so, yeah, organized ritual abuse, I think maybe sadistic, ritualistic abuse, ritual abuse. There's lots of different words for that to make it more encompassing. But yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah. So it's been a long road to recovery. And I praise God that I'm here, that I'm able to smile, that I'm able to form relationships and have a loving wife and kids. The recovery process has been grueling, and I don't feel like that there's ever one day that you've like arrived.
Right. It's always a journey. Healing is a journey, and you won't be done with it until you meet the pearly gates. It's a journey, and I know I've had tons of healing over the last several years, and still stuff is there that I've got to deal with. I mean, if you listen to the podcast regularly, you know this because I share a lot of this stuff. So, but absolutely, it's a journey. So what things on this journey, what things have you tried that have worked? What things have you tried that have not worked? How has that been on your journey?
I feel like I've tried the gamut. And some things you want to keep trying until it works. Other things, I've learned my lesson. I'm like, no mas, no more. I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
The biggest thing for me, and I know it's not like this with everyone, sometimes spirituality, it depends on the abuse. Sometimes people are so heavily abused by, let's say, a pastor or individuals that have a religious element to it, that the last thing they need is church. But for me, over the years, and like I've said, I've tried a lot of different things. Over the years, the most crucial, the most monumental form of healing has came through such things as worship, having a good church body, having a good church family that I can be a part of.
Right.
But for me, it has also been having healthy hobbies, healthy ways that I can get those positive dopamine hits without having to be through hypersexuality, substance abuse, any of those various things.
Right. Yeah. Anything you can do creatively, those creative juices are satiated that you might use in negative ways, but doing something positive through a hobby, through painting or art or music or poetry or whatever that is, something where you create. I know I do a lot of those energies just in this podcast and creating this, and then editing the final product and so forth. It gets those creative juices flowing, and I love that. But yeah, and then have this tangible thing that this is something I did. And yeah, it feeds that for sure. Absolutely.
The point that you are hitting on that I really want to emphasize is that for me, it's been, instead of focusing on the negatives, it has been trying to add as many positives as possible. The more positive things I can add in my life, those negative things just kind of start to fall away. I spent years battling with substance abuse and all the various mental health issues that come from all these scenarios, and just from life itself. For me, the more I can have a strong connection with others, like a good support system, and like I said, positive hobbies. For me, I'm a drummer. For me, it's being able to, I play drums at church every Sunday. and will often go and play
Nice.
at restaurants or with other bands. And it's one of my favorite things to do. Like, I love it. I love to be able to travel. I love to be able to learn. I have ADHD, so I love starting like new projects and new hobbies. But for me, being a workaholic has been one of my coping mechanisms.
Yep. Yep. Very common.
Physical
Yep.
therapy, and it's rough being poor. It's rough being financially challenged and being able to afford all those healing modalities. And I had my come to Jesus moment later in life and decided that I was done with that life. I committed to no longer doing anything illegally to get ahead. I decided I would rather be poor and pure than have abundant cash and have to deal with my conscience or have to deal with looking in my rearview mirror thinking the police is going to come and get me. So I don't want to say I took a vow of poverty because I haven't, but for a long time, greed was a big problem. So when I had my come to Jesus moment later in life, I decided that I was no longer going to make finances the priority. And the repercussion of that is you don't necessarily have money to pay for a therapist or pay for physical therapy or pay for all these various things. Praise God.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned physical therapy, and if you watch the YouTube videos, a lot of physical abuse happened during all of those horrible things. So there was a lot of physical rehabilitation you have had to go through, along with all of the emotional and spiritual healing that you've got to go through as well.
It's 23 years later, and I still require physical therapy. And it's intrusive physical therapy. It's embarrassing physical therapy. It's not like normal stuff. Just because the abuse that I went through was so sadistic that it just jacked me up. But I can say that all these years later, I feel like I'm doing so well. I feel like I've grown by leaps and bounds, and that I've been set free from life, addiction, and problems. I would say I'm doing really, 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 really great. Now, my wife will level me out pretty quick.
They tend to do that. They'll give you a dose of reality. And by the way, take the trash out.
Yeah,
while you're
my
doing
wife
it.
would be quick to say that I still have a lot of healing that needs to take place, but she will also say that just in we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. She's also quick to say that she has seen me grow so much. She was one of my classmates back in the day when I was going through all of the crazy stuff in high school. She was smart enough to stay away from me. She didn't, just like my parents, she didn't necessarily know what I was up to, but she knew I was up to something. And it intimidated her, and she kept her distance. But we definitely knew each other. We had shared friends, and it wasn't until later in life that we actually started talking. But she has a perspective of the old Brandon versus the new. So she's seen how much I've grown and changed over the years, but it's a never-ending process. And also, there'll be things that are like deep-seated or buried that don't start coming out until life gets stressful, or until there'll be certain triggers where I will feel like, oh man, I thought I was over this. I thought that I had gotten past these issues. These are things that haven't bothered me in forever. And then all of a sudden, I'll deal with intrusive thoughts or all those various struggles that I was like, geez, man, I really thought I was past this. So it's humbling. But the thing for me has been finding someone with more needs than myself and focusing on helping them. I live in a really wholesome household and community. So in my world, I'm the black sheep. In my world, no one has more trauma than me, at least not publicly speaking about it. But you don't have to look far to find ample amounts of people that have gone through horrific situations and are just so desperate for any help they can get. I have since then adopted a young man and a boy, he's now a young man, in Kenya that was a street beggar, an amputee. He lost his right hand at age 2 and spent his entire life begging, just to make it through another hour. And his life
Wow.
was so dire. He was supporting 3 generations of family that were worse off than him. They were dealing with a lot of handicap issues and situations where he was the most fit out of 3 generations to be able to provide. And so adopting him, adopting the family was a great way for me to get my mind off myself. And it started an
Nice.
incredible ministry. It has opened up endless amounts of doors that now, because of this young man, we have orphanages in Africa and in Asia, and we are actively and weekly teaching and ministering to countless individuals that are coming out of trafficking. Last Sunday, I had to wake up at 2 in the morning. I got to wake up at 2 in the morning to speak with a group of modern slaves. Over 100 individuals that were in their slave compound. I've called them by video. They got a speaker system, and I was able to speak with them, teach them, and help them. And they are all modern day slaves. And they are individuals that are worse off than me. The needs are overwhelming. So I have found that focusing on trying to use whatever resources I have, trying to use whatever skills and knowledge I have to pour into other people's lives helps me from not just getting stuck in my addiction issues, mental health issues, compulsive thoughts, intrusive thoughts, my pain, whether it's emotional or physical, spiritual, all the above. The more I can get my thoughts off myself and onto others, it actually kind of feels selfish. Like it feels like that I'm actually benefiting myself when I'm focusing on others.
Right, absolutely. So where in Africa is this group from, if you're able to talk about that, and how did you get connected to this group?
Totally. So it's all been 100% organic, something that's just a grassroots effort that starting off with just this young man that I adopted. His name's Robert. He is in Kisii, Kenya, which is in Africa. So if you're familiar with Kenya, any viewers that are watching, he's in Ogembo, which is a rural area. Kisii is the town, but it's deep into Kenya. You know, it's definitely an area that's really struggling. And so what happened was he originally contacted me through Facebook Messenger, and I thought he was a scammer. I do a lot of online work. I have a lot of accounts, digital accounts. I've grown accustomed to scam artists, people hitting me up, asking for money or trying to con me in one way or another to get some cash. And I just lost my job. I had lost my career at the time. I had shared my story publicly at a university, and I think it was the first time my employer actually heard in depth everything. And a week later, I was terminated.
Wow.
Did
they give a reason?
Yeah.
Or just, it's like, oh,
they
no.
They cited my pain. They said that I was in too much physical pain, and it just was no longer working. But it all happened right after me sharing my story and sharing the story with them. They had provided cameramen for me to actually record it, so they were able to actually watch my story. And then shortly thereafter, I was terminated. But I was frustrated. I was feeling very distraught. And then this young man messaged me on Facebook asking for help, and he evoked the name of God. I don't remember how he phrased it, but it was like in Christianese. He was, saying that, asking me to please help. And I, in a frustrated manner, I just let out all my frustration, let out all my aggression on him. It was not normal for me to respond like that, but he caught me in one of those moments, and I just laid into him. It rubbed me the wrong way that he was scamming me and talking about Jesus all at the same time. His response was so humble and contrite that it caught me off guard. I was like, crap, maybe he's not a scammer. Maybe he really is some one-handed poor African kid that really is just needing access to some clean water. I was very embarrassed because I have water. My pantry
Right.
is full. The last thing I wanted to be doing was like taking out my aggression on some kid that's already having a hard enough time. Make a long story short, I created some documents that had him verify the veracity of his story. I had him go to 3 different tribal leaders and have them support his narrative. I had him fill out all these documents, kind of like an intake form, like what Department of Human Services would have you do when you apply for aid through the government. I had him do that type of stuff. I had him send me video and pictures of his home, his family. I put him through the reamer. I trusted, but I wanted to verify. As soon as I found out that he was telling the truth, like my heart opened up wide. Within a short period of time, we adopted him. We took him and his family under our wing. At this point, we've been taking care of them with open arms over 2 years now, and it's grown exponentially. There are plenty of down and out street kids that are also needing help. So it did not take long for their private home to start filling up with other little kids, simply because they had access to food now. They had a foreign benefactor that was providing rice and clean water, and so they're believers. They have big hearts. It was hard for them to turn away other people. I named him Lionheart just because to me he was my role model. He was so innocent and naturally good. Like, he would rather die than steal. And for me, like, I was stealing and I wasn't even hungry. Like, I was doing bad things my whole life and whereas he wasn't even making bad choices, he wasn't even breaking the law even to feed his dying grandma, his dying little sister, himself. And I saw him as Lionheart. And so since then, we have established an orphanage there in Kenya called House of Lionheart. It has grown past Kenya. Now we're currently starting one in Gambia and have established one in Pakistan. And Pakistan has really taken off. They have endless amounts of needs there, but they also have a culture of modern day slavery. And the amount of, and I'd already committed myself to helping victims of trafficking, whether it's sex trafficking or labor trafficking, and then to just meet endless amounts of them was really pulling at my heartstrings. I have established friendships there with young people that were already boots on the ground, were already helping others that were coming out of trafficking, although they didn't have the words to describe it. They wouldn't have described themselves as victims of trafficking. To them, it was just normal life. Here, when we go into debt or have a sudden illness or have to come up with a lot of money, we'll apply for a credit card. We'll just go into debt. We'll pay interest on our credit card and then get another credit card. And there, instead of having access to a credit card, they will go to the town's largest employer and say, hey, my husband was in a life-threatening car wreck. I need to come up with $6,000 to pay for his medical bills. The employer will say, no problem. You all move here and you now work for me. You're the wife, the husband, the kids, the grandparents, and there's also interest on what I'm loaning to you. And before they know it, many, many years has passed and they're no closer to paying off that debt than when they first got into it. But they are indentured servants. The individuals I'm working with right now are mostly brick makers. They're working for a brick factory, and they're required, whether they're a little kid or an elderly person or middle-aged, any of these slaves are required to make 1,000 to 1,500 bricks a day in horrible weather. I mean, it gets freezing there in Pakistan or super hot, and they can get a meal at the end of the day. They will have to produce, let's say, 1,200, 1,500 bricks, and they're not even baby bricks. They're like big old paver bricks, big boys. And if they don't meet their quota, they don't eat. And there's no backup plan for them. If they go a couple days without meeting their quota, then they starve to death.
Wow.
So the need's real, and I've been happy to help. One of the reasons I'm so happy to help is because I've had so many that have helped me. It has been a team effort, whether it's been my family, whether it's been friends, whether it's been doctors or therapists or just random people that have reached out. I haven't been able to do this on my own, just my own personal healing journey, just to get out of all the muck and mire that was my previous decades. It has taken a lot of people, and so it has given me a heart for others, including my traffickers, including my abusers, because at the end of the day, the Lord has given me a heart to forgive and a heart to love. Now, it did not come overnight. There was a time where I was plotting the murder of, the lady that trafficked me. I was like, man, I'm a pimp and a player. Like, she doesn't know who she messed with. And I was going to take things into my own hands. One night, I was up late. Let's say it's 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I was just in such excruciating pain and had never gone away. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like death, I was always like a 8. Maybe on like the best day, maybe if I had a whole bunch of drugs or was in a hot tub or had extenuating circumstances, I could get down to a 7. But since I woke up in that forest, in the wooded area, my pain was excruciating. And so one early morning, late night, just wallowing in my pain, I was thinking through the steps of what I needed to do to off this girl, off my female trafficker, because I just the hatred was intense. And I felt like God said he would tell on me. I felt like God said, son, you won't get away with it. Like, you think you're in pain now. Imagine what it's like when you're stuck in prison, sitting on just concrete and metal 24/7. At this particular instance, I was in my bathtub. Yeah, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I was in horrible pain. But at least I was in my own bathtub. At least I had a comfortable bed I could go lay into. Taking matters in my own hands was not going to make things better. And so I realized that, well, if I couldn't kill the bitch, I needed to forgive her. I realized that my only path forward was to find it in my heart to get past all of this and realize that hurt people, and that I needed to cancel my plans and I needed to come up with some new ones. And it's been a long road to recovery. I don't want to say that every day is filled with love and roses and positive thoughts towards these individuals, but it has gotten better with time. And also, I have left a wake of bodies in my own life, not literal bodies. I haven't actually killed anyone, but just the amount of people that feel traumatized, people that have to go through their own healing journey, people that have to have their own counselors and therapists just to walk them through the trauma that Brandon brought to them, just because hurt people. And so I have decided that people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and that I have changed so much in all of these years, and I would hope that anyone that I've hurt in the past could find it in their own heart to forgive me and find their own healing, that I needed to afford the same thing to the people that have hurt me.
I even have a podcast I posted a few years ago, a podcast episode on forgiveness. And there's a lot of myths and misunderstandings about what forgiveness is and what it isn't, and that it is healthy for those of us who've dealt with trauma, whether through abuse or trafficking, those who caused harm. It is healing for us and can be such a huge part of our healing journey to be able to forgive those individuals, though it's not right away. It's a process, like you mentioned, but it can be very, very profound and not necessarily required if you're never in that headspace, you're never willing to even consider that. Cool, understandable. It is very helpful, but talk about it in depth in that episode. about what it means and what it doesn't mean. As far as like reconciliation, it doesn't relieve any responsibility or law enforcement or whatever that, yeah, if they did something illegal, yeah, they should be held accountable. It doesn't mean you're putting them back into your life or trusting them again or anything. But yes, you can be able to forgive them. And doesn't mean you have to even talk to the person. You do it inside between you and God, offering that. They don't necessarily even have to know about it. So all those things. But it definitely can help with the healing journey. And it's ongoing. They say 70 times 7. So much of my own trauma has come up over time. And it's like even more stuff I have to forgive these people who did harm. And just more stuff just comes forward. And then it's even more. So it's definitely a process.
And
Absolutely.
It's not anything that they've asked for. It's not anything that I have discussed with them. It is removing the power they have over me. But also, it's not just forgiving them, but also forgiving myself. It's easy to be like, geez, Brandon, if you weren't such a knucklehead, you wouldn't have put yourself in these situations in the first place. You know, you play with fire, you get burnt. And then I'm sitting back as a burn victim like, oh, Jesus, this hurts. And so I've had to forgive myself and realize that that even though something was meant for evil, God can use for good.
Right. And even giving that forgiveness to God, too, for allowing it to happen, for not intervening. Even though broken, sinful world, evil happens, bad stuff happens, and we're not puppets, we have free will, and for good or for bad, so we make bad choices all the time. And he does not cause things to happen or allow things to happen, but he can choose to intervene if he so chose. But yeah, forgive him as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the best things we can do is the way we respond to things.
Right, absolutely. So anything else you want to share?
I feel like we've covered it. I feel like that it's ongoing, that it's still ever evolving. And in no way do I feel like I've peaked. I feel like that I'm just getting started, that God has allowed me to live for a reason, and that he has needed me to go through these scenarios so I can have a complete understanding, but also he needs me to get to a certain level of healing and freedom so he can actually start using me. I feel like that he has a greater purpose for all of this, and there's such a massive need out there that he needs as many capable, willing hands as possible.
So any words of wisdom for that survivor listening in the audience out there?
Don't give up. And stay positive. For me, my positivity comes from a personal relationship with my creator. For me, realizing that my creator is an actual person, that it's not some ethereal spirit universe, but an actual individual, a God man named Jesus that came here and died on a cross for me and my abusers. And that through my relationship with him, I've been able to get past all of this trauma and drama. But even if you're not able to take it to that point, I feel like just putting one foot in front of the other and finding the silver lining, finding a way to be positive and just keep on going and just buying some time is the incremental steps needed to start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Start actually experiencing true joy, true victory, true healing, true redemption.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon, for sharing your wisdom and your story with us today. And we'll see you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.
If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Live Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarliveconsulting.com. That is Polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.